it changed a lot. I mean, it certainly cemented a lot for me.
Okay, quick bounce question to you before we bring in Garagos for the defense side. Okay, DNA on the sheath. I don't know what kind it is, but if it's his sheath, but somebody else used it. Now, I don't see any reason to believe that there is any connection to the shootout at Washington University that went on with somebody who wanted to kill their roommates and this theory that's all over TikTok about how, hey, that guy may have done it. He was friends with Brian. I don't know that any of that is true. I have no reason to believe it's true. But the idea that Koberger may have been there or in the car, but it wasn't him.
Okay, so, I always start out when I'm going to speculate on a case that I'm not actively investigating, right, that I'm not privy to all of the details. I always want to say that we know what we don't know. So it's entirely possible that information could come forward that would make some of those pieces fall into place. However, with what we know publicly right now, I would be completely disinclined to believe there was anybody else at that scene, or that Brian was operating in tandem with anybody else. When we tend to see, high profile, like high crime, intense, violent actions like this committed by two people, what we would call a folie à deux. We're talking about like the Hillside Strangler, Carla Homolka and her husband. We tend to see the signs of those in all sorts of different aspects of their lives. So we're going to see them paired up with that person regularly. We're going to see either, there's somebody in their life who they exert a lot of dominance over or exerts a lot of dominance over them. And at least as of right now, we're not seeing any of that with anything that we've been, been shown about Koberger.
Mm-hmm. But we don't know what we don't know. Mark Garagos, how does the idea of accomplice there but not him and timeline play into the mix of a potential defense?
Well, look, you had on the public defender who I think a lot of skilled and veteran defense lawyers do the same thing. Before you have the client tell you any facts whatsoever, you want to know what the prosecution has. And he wants to know what was in that probable cause affidavit. Why is that? Well, there are ethical concerns. There are concerns about whether or not you ever will put your client on the stand. I won't belabor that. But I will tell you this. One of the interesting kind of facts about this, and I think one of the reasons that people have been speculating, and I would echo, we don't know what we don't know. However, on the body cam, there is a discussion about the SWAT shootout. And when I'm talking about the body cam, once again, I believe it was in Indiana. It was one of the officers who pulled him over with his father. They talked about that. They mentioned that. That's interesting to me as a defense lawyer. One of the things I'd want to know, the first things that I would have an investigator follow up on is, did they know each other? And can I show that they knew each other? Were they together on that evening? Did they have previous evenings when they were together? And you would explore all of that. And I certainly would not want to be wedded to what the client tells me. I've had cases where a client has told me 1, 2, or 3 stories that were all false when it was about the facts. And the reason was ultimately the truth would have set them free, but it was so mortifying, it was so embarrassing that they didn't want to go there. And so the last person you want as your historian, so to speak, before you know what the prosecution has, is your client. That's just the way I approach it. And I think I'm not alone amongst the criminal defense bar in that regard.
Sarah, the idea of 10 minutes timeline, not enough. Couldn't do it alone. How long is 10 minutes?
It's a very, very long time. And I would disagree with that as well. I think it's entirely possible, particularly, if we look at the different scenarios without going into too much, graphic detail. If he came up that, onto the second floor landing and encountered Ethan as he was coming out into the hallway, where, Ethan's remains were found, it would have been very quick there in the hallway, a very, quick follow-up in the bedroom with Xana, and then up to the second floor where it at least appears, again, based on what we know now, where his primary target was, or up onto the third floor rather. And so I think it could all happen very quickly. which would also, support the idea that this may have been his first really significant violent act against other people, as opposed to when we see serial predation, we tend to see this kind of knife violence. We would tend to see want to follow up, spend time with the body, and we obviously did not see that here.
Sarah, very good and appreciated. Mark Garagos, your logic was only matched by your new haircut, which is stunning, stylish, but simple, just like the man himself. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it. And to you who have lit up and will light up my social media saying, what do you not want it to be him? You're trying to get him off. You're talking with that Garagos, the guy who's the genius defense lawyer. The whole point is to test the case. So you make sure that it is as strong as it needs to be so that we get justice. That's the job. We'll be right back.
Detectives arrested 28-year-old Brian Kohlberger.
He is now in the jail here in Moscow, Idaho.
News Nation is there on the ground with exclusive coverage.
We will forgive him, but he has to pay for what he's done.
Stay with News Nation.
I'm feeling better.
Body pain? Headache?
Nope. All in one and done.
Congestion?
Better.